Did you know that there's a way that you can train your muscles so that they have a higher capacity for resistance? They actually use 80% less oxygen, and you'll be more comfortable with a lower exertion perceived. Want to learn more? Watch this. When you learn how to use eccentric power when you train, not only is it so much more authentic, but it will literally reduce your risk of injury and you will make more gains. I can't wait to share this with you. Now, there's functional and there's non-functional training. And if you really want a strong, mobile, stable body, which I'm thinking you do, which is kind of why you're on my channel. And if you get benefit from this, please hit the like button. Please subscribe so that you'll get part 2 of this when I do demonstration of how to train your body eccentrically in major body areas. But for today, I want to go over some of the reasons why you'd want to do it. Because when you have a strong why, it'll really help you to be more inspired, to be more consistent, and to actually do the work. So it is critical to focus on real human function. We really want to eliminate as much as possible any exercises that are non-functional. And I'm going to demonstrate those in the part 2 of this particular training. Your body does have a way of responding to things. And stretching, the primary goal of stretching is flexibility. This is why we all stretch. And when we stretch, we are lengthening something. But let's define flexibility. It's the intrinsic properties of the body's tissues that determine the maximum amount that a joint can move, its range of motion, without causing injury. Now, there are people who injure themselves when they stretch because they really kind of go for it. They're tired of not being able to touch their toes or whatever reasoning behind it. They really want to be able to do that split or whatever. And, I've seen coaches when I've gone to my daughter's track meets, I've seen coaches, a kid will say, "Coach, can you stretch me?" And the kid will lay down on the ground and the coach will take their leg and try to stretch that hamstring for all they're worth. And all I think is, oh my gosh, that is such a potential for injury. And I'm not trying to disrespect the coach. People can only do what they've learned. They can only teach what they know. But there is nothing authentic about that. When somebody's laying on the ground and their leg is pointed up toward the sky and they're trying to bring that foot up toward their head, there is nothing authentic about that whatsoever. That is a real risk of injury. And I know my profession is kind of known to do that with their patients. Again, people can only teach what they know. So there's very authentic, life-giving function that our bodies and our joints are designed to do. However, a lot of the things that we do, especially with stretching, are completely inauthentic and potentially can cause injury. And there are muscles you can't stretch. Many muscles just don't allow full elongation because they're just positioned in a way around the joints so that you can barely stretch them at all, let alone tear them, no matter how hard you try. So a lot of people will do this kind of a stretching, they're going to stretch their quads before they go for a run. But what are you doing? So it's interesting that we do things by rote, and it's really just parroting. People just parrot what they've learned, what they've read, what they've heard, what they've been told by somebody that they perceive as an expert, maybe a physical or an athletic trainer. But again, people can only teach what they know. They can't teach what they don't know. So here's a case for retiring flexibility as a major component of physical fitness. This was a 2020 study. And this said flexibility has little predictive or concurrent validity with health and performance outcomes when we're looking at mortality or falls or occupational performance. And this is in apparently healthy individuals, particularly when viewed in light of the other major components of fitness, which is body composition. You know, how much muscle versus fat ratio do you have? Cardiovascular endurance, muscle endurance, and muscle strength. So this mouthful means stretching is not seen to reduce our risk of bad things happening and doesn't improve the things that matter most when it comes to overall health and fitness. Now, I agree with his stance that flexibility can be maintained in other ways that provide more health benefits, such as resistance training. I personally have always hated stretching, and I never made it a pre-workout habit. I would, however, warm up my muscles. I would load and unload, and I still do load and unload to warm up my body if I'm planning on doing any potentially heavy weightlifting. So there are ways to do this. Now, eccentric exercise. This is when you are loading your muscles to unload your muscles. What I'm doing here right now, this is not a tricep exercise. This is loading the anterior chain of my body, or loading my core, you could say, kind of from the nose to the toes. Some of you might say, well, she's loading her abs, because what I'm doing here is I'm leaning back, and this resistance, I'm battling this resistance. So I'm lengthening the front of my body against tension, and it's getting longer. So that's eccentric load. And you actually have a higher resistance capacity when you eccentrically load than when you push and shorten your muscles. You can resist 30 to 40% more weight. So you will get stronger because you're producing more power this way. And then there's 80% less oxygen needed, because the muscles that are resisting the lengthening use less oxygen than doing concentric work. Now, I'm not saying you should never train concentrically. Don't hear what I'm not saying, but I'm going to explain this in the demo in part 2 of this, when I show the movements and explain more. And then there's a lower perceived exertion. It's much more comfortable to produce the force output when you're eccentrically loading than in a traditional concentric exercise when you're shortening under the load. The bottom line is we can generate significantly more muscle force from a closed kinetic chain, which is when your feet are on the floor and you're lengthening. And it's typically a lot more functional rather than focusing on a specific muscle. It's just such a much healthier, safer, more functional, more life impacting for the good way to train your body. I want you to understand that we're kind of like an accordion. I don't mean that, we can make music, but because of gravity and because of ground reaction force, these are physics. Your body literally loads so that you can unload, sort of like an accordion. When we pull it out and the bellows fill with air and we push it in, that's when the music is made. Well, your body is kind of the same way. When you lengthen it, you lengthen a muscle and then you shorten it, that's where the music plays, where the magic happens, where the performance occurs. So you can actually load your body from the top down or from the bottom up. And I'm going to explain that in part 2 also when I demonstrate the movements. But we do want to be loading our body in 3 planes of motion in order to unload in a way that provides real life function. Now, movement actually initiates body movement. So how does your body react? There's a linkage system that our body kind of depends on, and we get this 3-dimensional whole body reaction when we go to do something. So this person going to pick up this kettlebell, when they squat down, the knees are bent, the feet are ready to push into the ground with an equal and opposite reaction. As the upper body pulls that weight up, but the back of this person's body has loaded, it has lengthened, it is ready to react. How does your body react when you get it ready? Real life. Physics helps us to prepare for real life, authentic life, life that brings us joy and quality of our days. So we want to be able to strengthen and lengthen and stabilize and mobilize. These things each have their own sort of quality of function. We want to be strong so that we can live life large, so that we can lift things, that bag of garden mulch or that beautiful baby to pull up into our arms. But in order to do that strengthening, our muscles and our body needs to be able to lengthen in order to create that tensional energy and then unload or shorten after it lengthens, which is when that energy gets released. While we're doing all of that, we need to be able to stabilize our body so that we're not falling down when we do that, and mobilize the body. We need to have a full range of motion in our joints that will allow us to mobilize as we lengthen, as we strengthen. We need to be mobile and stable. So we really want to prepare our bodies for authentic life as long as we're above ground. And then do all of your muscles function together for a task? We want this synergistic muscle function, which means everything is working together as a team. This beautiful young woman here is making sure that all of her muscles are functioning together for this task so that she doesn't get injured. She's not trying to isolate anything or fragment the movement. We want that. We want the muscles working together whenever we're exercising, whenever we're training our body. We don't want to be isolating things. That's where tendinitis and tendinopathy and tendinosis and injury occurs. I've worked with many people who spent, 4 or 5 days a week going to the gym. And yeah, they were coming to me because they had tendinitis, because they had joint pain, because a lot of the times we're isolating things. We want everything to be functioning together because everything's connected to everything else. Your fascia is a 3-dimensional network, and its sole purpose is to be your stabilizing framework in all of your movements. Your nervous system plays a significant role in stabilizing you, but it can only work efficiently in a stable environment that's provided by your fascial network. So everything is connected. You can consider your fascia a system of biomechanical regulation. And I know this sounds like, oh my gosh, your eyes might be glazing over here, but we've got all these different systems. So your circulatory system, which is made up of all your blood vessels and your heart and all of those different parts of the body that make that up, that's actually a chemical regulator. It regulates the chemical releases in the body. And your nervous system can be considered a timing regulator. But your fascial system, I love it. Think of it as a movement regulator. And that tendinopathy that I mentioned before, when looking at the literature, there was a systematic review done in 2020 that reported that eccentric exercises were the most common and consistently effective treatment for tendinopathy. When treating tendinopathy, regardless of body part, eccentric exercise was the single most effective treatment to improve tendinopathy-related pain and improve self-reported function. So, we really don't necessarily want injections to fix these things. There was a study that found that these injections actually slowed down the rate of new tendon cell growth. And there was another study that found that taking anti-inflammatories had a similar effect on the tendon cells. So why not load the body properly to fix the body? And I love this picture. This is absolute joy. Your body loves training with control, with safety, and with success. So if you got some value out of this, please hit the like button. Please subscribe so that you can get part 2 of this, which will be me demonstrating the motions, showing you how to eccentrically load parts of the body in a way that will breed success and give you joy. I'll see you in the next video.